The Jumper, Episode 2, Final Episode. The night manager wasn't convinced. He said it didn't make sense that someone would get up in the middle of the night, run across a dark room in his underwear, avoiding two beds, and then dive through a closed window that had the shade and curtains closed. He checked with the hotel operator to see if any calls were made from the room. The operator said yes, a call was made just a few minutes ago, and because it ran through a switchboard, she heard the whole thing. The caller, Robert Lashing, who was the man in the bathroom, had called a number which belonged to a doctor, Donald Adams. The call lasted only a few seconds. A few hours later, John Jewson's family were notified. They were told there had been an accident. John had either fallen or jumped from his 20th floor room. John's body was so badly damaged that the funeral was held with a closed casket. The Jewson family tried to move on, but had trouble coping with losing their father. Eric Jewson would ask his mother about John from time to time, and she would always say the same thing. "You're never going to know what happened in the room that night." But 20 years later, that would change. In 1975, the Commission released information to the public about its investigations into secret activities. The report mentioned that a civilian scientist working for the department had been given a drug without his knowledge as part of an experiment. This was reported in the New York Times and Washington Post, and so made its way to the Jewson family. The government confirmed the scientist was John Jewson, and just 10 days later the family were given a formal apology and $950,000 in settlement if they agreed not to sue. The Jewson family agreed to the terms. Mrs. Jewson never wanted to talk about John's death or his job. John's children, now in their 20s and 30s, always knew their father was a scientist. Mrs. Jewson only knew a few things about her husband's job. She knew he was a scientist doing important work for the government. She also knew he was deeply unhappy. One of the last things John said to his wife was that he'd made a terrible mistake. John's children learned for the first time what their father actually did for a living. He was no ordinary scientist. During World War II, John Jewson was one of the first scientists assigned to the top secret biological warfare projects. John's speciality was experimenting on animals and people, and also exposing large populations to anthrax and brucella. Jewson developed delivery devices disguised as shaving cream cans, cigarette lighters that emitted deadly gas, and lipstick that killed instantly. John saw the results of his own weapons being used on expendables. Some of these people died slowly and in agony. It was clear that John's work was becoming too much for him to bear. He submitted his resignation, but he was talked into staying. It was suggested that he see a psychiatrist to help him cope. John's family was told he died from jumping or falling out of the window. However, 20 years later, more details emerged. John's body was exhumed and reburied next to his wife. But John's children had an additional plan. A medical examiner conducted a second autopsy. There were no cuts on his body and no shards of glass, which would have been expected by jumping through a window. And even though John landed on his back, his skull above his left eye had a blunt form trauma injury. He had another serious wound on his chest. The examiner said of these findings, "I think Mr. Jewson was intentionally thrown out of the window." John's son sued again, but because of the agreement they signed in 1975, the judge had to dismiss the case. However, the judge did say, even though the case couldn't proceed as a matter of law, the allegations made by the family, though sounding far-fetched, appeared to be the truth.